Okay, I believe we've started. Yes, we've started recording. Welcome everybody to our 225th Reading Online Sports Economics Seminar, hosted by the University of Reading, sponsored by the Sports Economics Review. And today we have David Perez-Reyna from the University of the Andes presenting the impact of tournament design on competitive fairness. Just before David gets going, just to say that there's a bunch of abstract submission or conference submission deadlines coming up. One in particular added this week to the reminder is for the North American Association of Sports Economists Association sessions at the Southern Economic Association conference in Houston, Texas in November. Frank Stevenson is fielding those, so if you can send an abstract if you want to attend the NARCI sessions at the Southern meetings, the deadline for that will be March the 28th. And the email address for Frank is in the reminder. I'll stick it in the comments as well in case you want to submit there. There's also an abstract deadline for the Athens University of Economics and Business Sports Analytics Workshop. That's on the 21st of March, so coming up. And on March the 31st, the European Sports Economics Association Annual Conference in Zurich. The abstract deadline is the 31st of March for that. And finally, 1st of April, the abstract deadline for the 20th Gijón Sports Economics Conference. And again, I'll put the details in the chat and they're in the reminder you got as well. David, good to have you. David's happy to take questions as he goes along. So raise your hand and ask your question if you have any questions for him. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, James, and thank you, everybody, for giving me a chance to present this paper. This paper is co-authored with Daniel Franco Laverde, who is also in the audience right now. So to begin with, when we look at Copa Libertadores, let's say in the past 10 years, what we see is that Brazilian teams have dominated a lot, especially recently. On the other hand, when we see Colombia, we see that the best Colombian team in Libertadores has barely surpassed the group stage. So what we're going to do in this paper is we're going to tell a story where the tournament design of the domestic league, of the domestic tournament, actually has an effect on teams' incentives. And we're going to claim that a poor tournament design decreases the probability that good teams win and increases the probability that bad teams do. And this is consistent with the fact that Colombia has not consistently fielded its strongest teams in Copa Libertadores, since precisely the tournament design of the Colombian National League is not the best. So specifically what we do is, first we do an empirical motivation where we use the Opta score as a proxy for team quality. We follow Franco Laverde 2025 to estimate the probability of match outcomes between any two teams. And with this methodology, we simulate the Colombian tournament under 3 tournament designs. So we do a league, we do quadrangulars, and the playoffs. I'll talk in a bit what's the real tournament design of Colombia. And what we see is that the probability that the best team wins the tournament decreases by almost 10 percentage points when we go from a league to quadrangulars, which is the actual format design of the Colombian team. And hand in hand with that, we also see that the probability that the worst team wins also increases when we have playoffs relative to when we have a league. And with this empirical motivation, we posit a theoretical model to rationalize these findings. And what we see in this theoretical model is that, in fact, the probability that the first team wins when we have a league, and when I call a league in this talk, I'm going to refer to a round robin. So having a league makes it more likely that the best team wins relative to, for instance, having a league plus a final, which is like an abstraction of having a league plus another round, that other round being playoffs or the other round being something else. And the reason for this is that when we have a league plus a final, other teams have an extra chance of winning. Also, on the other hand, when we have a league plus a final, the best team also has an additional chance of winning because the best team could qualify being the second in the tournament and still make it to a final and win. However, the first effect dominates. So the effect that worst teams are given an extra chance dominates the effect that the best team is given an extra chance. So I mean, at this point, before I go into details, I don't know if there's any questions. Okay, so let me proceed. So let me talk a little bit about what the Colombian tournament looks like, because it's a little bit more complicated than a league. So in Colombia, there are 20 teams in the first division. There are 2 annual tournaments. In each tournament, there's a first round which kind of resembles a league in the sense that it's round robin. With the exception that there's an extra game. So there's this extra game, which is usually the local derby. So since James was in Bogota a couple of months ago, that local derby will be Santa Fe Millonarios. And now I've told James which teams I think is better. I know Jorge agrees, and Daniel also agrees, by the way. After this first round, then the top 8 teams are split into 2 groups, the groups of 4. The teams play each other twice, so there will be like a 2-round robin within those groups, and then the winner of each group plays a final. And then this final determines the winner of the final determines the team that is the champion of that tournament. That champion qualifies to Copa Libertadores. So our claims we are claiming the motivation is that that team that wins is not likely to be the best team in the competition. So what we're gonna do in our Pelican motivation is we're gonna see our data before the second round of the tournament of the past semester begins. That is, we're already seeing the first 20 games. We're already seeing which teams qualify to the second round. The second round being being the teams that qualify being the top 8 teams of that first round. And we're gonna take those 8 teams and we're gonna compare for those 8 teams. We're gonna simulate what would be the probability of winning a tournament along 3 designs. The first design would be actually matching our the current tournament design. We split teams into groups. We simulate the teams playing against each other in those groups. The best teams qualify for the final. We simulate the final. We see the probability of each team winning that final. We also simulate what we call like a small league, so like a round robin between these 8 teams. And we also simulate playoffs. Playoffs being a team plays against another team. They play 1 game. The winning team qualifies for the second round. Since there are 8 teams, they will be like simulating quarterfinals, semifinals, and a final. So what we do to the simulation, we use the Opta score as a proxy for team quality. So maybe many of you know what it is, but to summarize, this is a ranking between 0 and 100, which is updated daily. So what we do is we take the Opta ranking of the day before the actual quadrangular drawings occurs. This is a ranking that is like an Edo star ranking. That means that the team earn more points for defeating better teams, and symmetrically, teams get subtracted more points for being defeated by worse teams. And this is what the Opta score looks for our simulation. So here you will see that there's a team that is missing. The reason that it's missing, Millonarios. Sorry to make these Colombian games, but I know that James went to a game. Millonarios didn't qualify to the second round of that tournament. Just to highlight, just to anticipate a little bit of the results, the champion of this tournament, the actual champion was Univ, which is the second worst team. Which I mean, it would be like a drawing, but it's consistent with the results in the sense that the tournament design in the Colombian actually makes the worst team have a higher chance of winning. So what we do here, yes, Yuri.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question. So are these 2 stages you're talking about, the apertura and clausura? Is that the style in Colombia? Yes. So do the participants change between the first half and the second half?
No, it's the participants.
Okay, so no promotion. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a promotion and relegation, but it's on an annual basis. And actually, that how the promotion relegation goes in Colombia, that's for also another paper to talk about poor tournament design. So maybe you'll hear us about soon. So what we do is we take this Opta score, that's our proxy for team quality. Unfortunately for us, Atlético Nacional is the best qualified team. And what we do is we follow Franco Laverde. So Franco Laverde, what Daniel does, this Franco Laverde is my co-author. What he does is that he estimates some parameters with a a multinomial estimator, where he uses the opta-score difference and the home advantage to estimate the probability of the outcome of a match. So this probability of the outcome of a match is between winning, drawing, or losing. So we don't simulate the number of goals. And then what we do is that we take the 3 tournament designs that we're gonna do. We perform 10,000 simulations per format. So for instance, we take these 8 teams, we do a random draw of the 2 groups, we simulate 10,000 simulations with the parameters that Daniel estimated in the previous paper, and that gives us an outcome for matches. And then we calculate the probability, and then we also simulate which teams get in the first position of each group. We simulate the final team, and we get the champion for a given simulation. And then we do that 10,000 times, and then we estimate a probability that a given team wins a tournament. For the league, we just take the 8 teams, we simulate a match once with each other. Yes, I am.
Just to clarify, so across these 3 different formats, the actual tournament, the league format, and the player format, are the number of fixtures the same, or are they different?
They are different. They are different. So in the league format, there will be 7 fixtures per team. In the actual tournament, it's actually you play twice against each team in your group, so that will be 6 fixtures, and if you qualify to the final, it will be 2 more. And in the playoff format, you at most play 3 games: quarterfinals, finals, semifinals, and final.
So, I mean, what I would expect, I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but if there are more fixtures, then the best team will come out on top more often because there's more rolls of the dice. They have an edge in every fixture that they play. And so if it's just 1 fixture, yeah, I might get unlucky 1 time. If I'm the best team over 1,000 fixtures, I'm going to come out on top.
What we actually find is the opposite. Like these extra fixtures, you get an extra chance for the best team, but you also get a chance for the worst team. And actually that compensates more.
All right.
Maybe I'm going to, in the theoretical model, we try to rationalize this a little bit further. So maybe that qualifies a little bit more. Yes, Jorge?
Okay.
In the playoff format, you said there were 3 games per team, but I would say it's 6 games, right? They play home and then they play away in each round. Yes, I wasn't.
Yes. So to be clear, actually we do 3 games, but we claim that there's no difference. So in this estimation, we are using what do you call it, a dummy for home advantage, but we can also Daniel also estimates when there's a neutral field, right? So in that sense, we could simulate a home, like a fixture being home and away. What we do is we only simulate once with the neutral field, and so on average, it's very similar. It's the same. Yes, Stefan.
Yeah, so in this case, then best means the team with the highest Opta score. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so but why? Why should I think that? I mean, because I had a high score in the past, doesn't mean to say that I'm good today, does it?
That's true. Like we're taking this Opta score. That's why we take the Opta score before the actual simulation begins. What we're doing is we're taking this Opta score as an exogenous measure of quality. Because I mean, like any other measure we could think would be kind of endogenous, right? And what we claim is that given this exogenous measure of quality, the tournament design makes you worse. Like it could make you worse off at the end. I don't know if that makes sense. Like we needed to take a stance of an exogenous, and we thought the Opta score was like the best we could do empirically.
Right, but I mean, normally when I say the word best, I have a specific meaning, and actually, if I beat you in a game, then I'm better than you. Here it's saying, well, it doesn't matter how well I played in the game. No matter how well I played in this game, if I played better, I'm still not best because you've defined best as this exogenous Opta score, right?
Oh, I see. I think I understand your question. So what we claim is a better team is that it has the highest probability of winning a game. And if you're a better team playing against a worse team, that probability of you winning a game is even higher. So for instance, the probability of Atlético Nacional defeating Fortaleza is higher than the probability of Atlético Nacional defeating team.
Right, and I think that's fair enough. I would just avoid the terminology best because actually it's not really best. It's just happens to have a higher Opta score at this point in time.
Okay, yes, I think that's that. Yeah. So I think we should make it more explicit what our definition of best team is.
Okay.
No.
Daniel, you wanted to complement something?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that with the Opta score, as maybe you already know, it follows an ELO format, so it is all the time, like every week, updating regarding the last games that have been played. So when we got these scores, it had all the results, like it was already updated with all the results from the first, like the first stage of the Colombian League, and after like something that we saw at the end of the tournament was that the positions in this ranking were very similar, despite we already had Junior as the champion and all the games were already played. So it changed a little bit. It's updated all the time. But as David was mentioning, it incorporates the current games that are being played and the most recent games in this ELO ranking, considering the direct matches they play against each other. So that's something that I feel can be updated, but I understand what you're saying about the terminology of defining the best team or not, depending on these definitions you're giving. So thank you for that comment, but just wanted to mention that this is updated constantly.
So with these drawings, what we get is the following picture. So here I just want to highlight something. So as expected, kind of by construction, the best team has the highest probability of winning. So it will be Nacional. Under the league format, Nacional will have a 37.4% probability of winning, in the sense that 37% likelihood of winning the championship. Yes, Ian?
So I was just wondering if it's worth, or whether you thought about it, validating this ranking with betting odds. Have you considered that?
No, we haven't, and I think that would be a great thing to corroborate. Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, if your national team is always the favorite going in, then yeah.
My concern there would be that I don't know how liquid betting odds are in Colombia, but for sure we could check.
But that's something we don't have documented. That's something that we will need to check definitely. But we have some empirical observations that we have done with that, like checking our probabilities against the odds regarding bets, and they are quite similar. Actually, they're quite similar.
Great.
Yes, Daniel?
Yes, sorry, I just went to close the door. A question about how you run the simulations. So are the ratings held constant at their initial value, or do you allow them to evolve over time?
We keep them constant.
Okay. I know that there is some, disagreement about this among people who do these things, whether you want to I think they call hot decking, that, if a team wins a game in the simulation, then you update its rating as if it was a real game. And another possibility is that, you allow the true ability of the team to be sort of the current ability plus some, say, AR1 process to capture fluctuations in form or stuff like that. And that will tend to make things a little bit more uncertain and so less likely for the favorites to win.
Yeah. But I mean, we need to take a stance. But one of the reasons that we like this stance that we took was also because, like what Daniel was mentioning, we see that the rankings don't change that much. Like they didn't change that much between the date we took and the final of the tournament. So that kind of, I don't kind of shows that the cost of endogenously updating the ranking could be more than the benefit that we could get. But that's something that we for sure for the future we could consider.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, just a question regarding the schedule. Is it the actual schedule that you use, or you create a schedule? Because I guess schedule may matter.
So we do this simulation before we know the actual 4 groups that we get. And actually, a part of the simulation, actually, when we simulate the actual tournament, what we do is that we randomly generate a group, like the 2 groups, and then with those 2 groups, we do the 10,000 simulations. Now, that being said, our results would be even more striking. Our results being that the probability of the best team winning would decrease by more if we actually used the real quadrangular drawings, because the group that Nacional got was a tough group. It was Nacional, Team, and I think it was America and Junior. So it was, I mean, Nacional got with, it was against 2 of the top 4 teams. So in that sense, by construction, kind of the probability of Nacional winning the quadrangulars will have decreased by more. I don't know if I'm being clear with that.
No, I mean, you have in this second round robin with the 4 teams, you have 6 games, right?
Yes.
I strongly believe that the schedule may affect the probabilities of winning.
Okay.
Within the round robin.
I think I understand. Yeah, we don't take into account like that effect of if there's a difference between you playing a team first or later. Yeah, in our case, yeah, it's like independent probability drawings each game. But yeah, knowing, given that the literature has found that actually plays a role, yeah, we consider that to see that how that would change our results.
Okay.
Yeah, so curious. I mean, I want to highlight the fact that yeah, going from the league format to a playoff format decreases the probability that the best team wins the most, and increases the probability that the worst team wins the most. Actually, you know, the champions the champion of the tournament was Univ, and going from the blue line to the green line almost doubles the probability that that event actually could occur. And what we get, our takeaway from this empirical motivation is that, in some sense, the league is like a filter for quality, because you're playing every team the same number of times, and every team is playing every other team the same number of times. When you get quadrangulars, on the other hand, you get weaker teams more chances to win. So it is true that you get better teams also more chances to win, but the fact that you get weaker teams more chances to win makes the worst teams more likely to actually be champions. So in this case, the fact that you get triangulars actually was detrimental to Nacional or team. And if we get playoffs, that is even more amplified, because precisely there's this extra level of luck. The extra level of luck being like the extra drawings you get, and that goes against the best teams and in favor of the worst teams. But to be a little bit more clear, like to rationalize this a little bit more strictly, what we do is we posit a theoretical framework. So I think, Stefan, here we're gonna make explicit what our definition of best team is. So we're gonna consider n teams, and we're gonna say each team is endowed with an exogenous quality. This quality, which we note by Z, is what we say is the level of the team. So this is gonna be exogenous. And given this quality, what we're gonna do, we're gonna say is we're gonna assume that the probability that a team defeats another team depends on this function that is a function on the difference in the quality. So this function would be what in our empirical motivation, Daniel in the other paper used as a multinomial logit. So we assume that this function is strictly increasing in the sense that if your quality difference is higher, then the probability is extremely increasing. Just to normalize things and to abstract and make things a little bit more tractable, we assume that winning earns 1 point and losing earns 0. Actually, this is not a very strong assumption because it's just a normalization. What can be a strong assumption is the tie breaking. We don't allow for draws. So what we claim is that in case there's a draw, it is as if the better team had a higher chance of winning that draw. So it is an equivalent as if you get a draw, it is as if you go to penalty shootouts or you flip a coin and the probability that you win the penalty shootouts or the chance of the coin is exactly the same as this previous probability. So this is just for a simplification, which we think isn't playing an important role, but we for sure need to make sure about that. And with this theoretical framework, what we're going to do is we're going to compare the probability that team 1 wins a league in this case being you play once against each other team, with the probability that the team 1 wins a tournament, where the tournament is a first round against each other and a final. So this would be like an abstraction of, like, let's say like a quadrangular, where like group stage after the first round, where the group stage is just 2 teams, or like the playoffs where you just go to a final right away. I think I saw a hand raised, but I don't see it anymore. I don't know if there was a question. So let me. Sorry, Alex.
Yeah. So just to be sure, you basically assume fixed probabilities of winning throughout the tournament that are only based on teams' innate abilities, right? You
Yes,
do not consider the interim rankings and the tournament incentives, right?
Correct. I mean, the incentives for the tournament are going to be kind of endogenous in the sense that the probability that you win the tournament depends on that tournament design. But to your first question, yes, we take this probability as fixed throughout the tournament.
I see. Okay.
So this is a bit of notation, but just to be clear, we take. Let me go to an example first of a tournament with 4 teams. I think that it's easier to understand here our notation, but we generalize it to n teams. So what we're gonna say is a tournament is gonna be this vector. So if there are 4 teams, there are 6 possible games, each team playing against each other. So our tournament is gonna be just a bunch of 1s or 0s, where a 1 or 0 is if a team defeats another one or not. So for instance, if we take a tournament and x1-2 is a 1, that means that the first team defeated the team 1, the best team defeated the team 2. So we get a bunch of possible tournaments. If there are 4 teams, the number of possible tournaments is 64, 2 to the 4th. And then the probability that there's a 1 here, that the probability that the best team defeats the second best is going to be this probability that we have here that depends on this difference between the quality of those teams. Okay. So in that sense, we get an expression of what's the probability that each tournament occurs. And this probability is going to be given by this expression at the end. So, we're going to call the set of all possible tournaments omega. So in the case of if there are 4 teams, this set has 64 elements. In the case where there are n teams, this set is huge. This set could potentially be huge because it's all the possible combinations of 1s and 0s that you get for all the possible matches that you get. If there are n teams, the possible matches that you can get is this n combined with 2. And then we given a tournament, so given this set of realization of matches, the total points that a team gets is going to be, well, the number of 1s that the team gets if it is playing against a worse team, or the number of 0s if it's a campaign against a best team. So this is just notation, just to be clear that we're not counting things twice. If you see here when I'm denoting this, I'm putting the best team first and the second team last. So there's not an x2-1 because that would be like counting twice. In these total points, this is where I'm saying that the claim that if a team wins, gets 1 point, this is where you can see that is nominal, because if a team winning would get 3 points, would be just multiplying here by 3, but that wouldn't affect anything of what follows. So the realizations, the tournaments where the best team wins are gonna be the tournaments where the best team has at least as many points as any of the other teams. And this is kind of important because this is drawing from the assumption I made earlier, that in case if there's a tie, not only within a match, but if there's a tie in total points after a tournament ends, we're going to assume that the best team wins, either because there's a draw of some kind and then it has a higher probability of winning. So then it would be like this set would be the set of all tournaments where the best team has the most points after the first round. Yes, Daniel, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just to mention that even though David is mentioning that this assumption may be strong, for you to know, in the Colombian league, when like the two top teams in the ranking, they have like an invisible point. So it will be a very similar application of this assumption. That is, regardless if you have the same points, but regardless the goals difference or direct games, the team that is seen as the highest quality one gets this invisible point and gets to the next round in case of a tie. So this assumption is also something that we see in real applications as well. So it's not something very difficult to imagine.
Thank you. Now, the realizations of this first round where team 1 is second would be the realizations where there's a tournament. There would be like the tournaments where there's only one team that has more points, right? So that's, kind of easier to explain, but it would give us like another set. So now, given that, the probability that the best team wins a league, round robin, would be just adding all the probabilities of occurrence of these tournaments in this set. The probability that the team 1 wins the other tournament design, the other tournament with the other tournament design, that being the fact that you play the first round against the other team and there's a final, would be these same tournaments, and then you play the final against the team that is second. So the probability, here I'm not using a little bit notation, but it will be something like this. So this thing here, but you need to multiply times the probability of that the first team defeats the team that won second. And then plus the probability that you get a tournament in this set where the first team is second, and then that multiplied times the probability that best team defeats whichever team was first. So what we're gonna do now is just to compare these probabilities. And comparing these two probabilities is just checking the sign of this difference, right? So, and I put in this difference because I think this kind of highlights the point. If you're the best team, going from a league to having a playoff being like this format that I mentioned, like this other format, there's like an advantage. The advantage would be you get an extra chance of making it to a final. And that would be kind of summarized by this right-hand term. On the other hand, there's also something that goes against you. And the thing that goes against you is that if you have to play a final, there's an extra chance that you might lose. And that is summarized by this first term. So this is why there's this 1 minus E1 here, J appears. And then, so at the end, checking whether this first probability is higher than the second one, is just checking the sign of this. And what we find is that actually this first term is greater than the second term. So that is what the best team loses for having to play like an extra game is actually more than when the first team wins for having an extra chance of making it to a final by being the second one. So what that was allows us to claim that basically having a final match is a net penalty for the best team, and that's what actually allows us to conjecture that having like the extra draws, so that being like playoffs or being like an extra round, is actually worse for the best team, because what the first team gets is the benefit for the first team is actually less than the cost, and that's actually that's a direct result of this assumption. The fact that the first team defeating any other team, the best team defeating any other team, the probability that the best team defeats any other team is greater than the probability that any other team defeats that other team. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. I don't know if there's some questions here. Okay, and that was basically what I had to show today. So with this paper, what we find is that formats like the Colombian quadrangular system, they might be it might be the maximization, this uncertainty of having more teams having more chance of winning or being a champion is actually detrimental, because it comes at the cost of having the best teams being able to win. And in that sense, the champion doesn't necessarily the champion isn't consistently the best team. And in the case of, to bring it back to Colombia, this is basically the reasoning why the Colombian teams might be doing poorly in the Copa Libertadores. And it's the fact that we don't send consistently our best teams. We just send the teams that might be able to get advantage of this tournament format and end up being a champion. And I think that this is very relevant, and this is the last bullet goes beyond our current paper, because it is actually a dynamic disincentive for teams to be better. So this is just not a static effect. It's just not that given the team quality, we're not sending the best teams to the Copa Libertadores. It actually is a disincentive for teams to be better. So actually the average quality of teams in Colombia, this might be an explanation why the average quality of teams in Colombia is much worse than the average quality of teams in Brazil. And that's all I've got for today. I don't know if there are any more questions.
Okay, thanks very much, David. We have questions. So Stefan looks like his hand was up first. So Stefan, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Interesting, David, but I think you need to, I would suggest that you need to think a bit more about the theory behind this. So it strikes me that the fundamental proposition that is a problem here is the independence of irrelevant alternatives. So the probability that team A beats team B is independent of the presence of team C. And that seems to be both theoretically and empirically unlikely. That there are all of these influences that go on depending on who is in the set. And that's why, which is what makes it actually fundamentally difficult to establish an unambiguous exogenous ranking of teams that you assume in theory. You can't actually, these Zs that you assume, you couldn't in practice know what the Zs are for those teams. There is a very good paper that I suggest you look at in Sports Economics Review, of all things, from last year by Jan van Oors, where he looks at what he calls bogey teams. And he's focused on Dutch football and Ajax, Anderlecht, and Ajax, Feyenoord, and PSV. And what he finds is that each team has a bogey team from the other. So you've got this sort of triangular relationship that A beats B, B beats C, but C beats A, which is, again, fundamental violation of the assumption of your model that wouldn't happen. So I think you need to, in order to make this work as a theory, you need to really address those issues. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. We will take a look at that paper.
Thanks, Stefan. Daniel, did you want to say something?
Yes, something about a comment that someone mentioned before. I don't remember who mentioned this, but someone asked about if more games would have more probability of having like the best team being a champion against shorter tournaments. I actually think that logic is correct and similar to what we are saying. I know what David mentioned, but the thing is that actually the league has more games than the quadrangulars format because the league could be round robin or double round robin, but is 7 teams that each team will face, while in the quadrangular is going to be 3 teams for each team. But the idea or the main idea that we are pointing out is that every time you have like a direct confrontation between the teams, you have more variation in the probability instead of the lower variation of having a longer tournament and a league tournament in which everyone faces each other. So that idea of having a final or that idea of having direct games is the one that is making the higher variation and thus making the lower probability for highest rated teams being the champions. So that's something that I don't want to say that I want to say that is not that we're finding that longer tournaments are worse than shorter tournaments, but when you add like these direct confrontations, that's what adds variation and makes this result to happen. And about Stefan comment, thank you so much. As David was saying, thank you, because that's something we should consider. That's something what we are keeping static and exogenous, and that may happen that depending on the rival on the field, that may change, and that would involve analysis of each of the teams individually against the other one. But yeah, the idea was having like a exact proxy or measure of quality, and with that quality, try to see if the quality is a predictor of the winning team according to the format or of the tournament. So that's what we are seeing in here. But of course, that independence of irrelevant alternatives is important to consider. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. More questions and comments? Daniel.
Yes, a very interesting study. I have a couple of comments. So one, I have to. I mean, I think the results are interesting, but I'm not, super shocked. I mean, I think that it's, pretty much anybody would have predicted that. Knockout tournaments are more random, and league round robin tournaments are, more likely to make the better teams emerge. So I think that what is important that you do is quantitatively evaluating how much that difference is. The qualitative difference is not really that surprising, but how much the round robin versus quadrangular versus playoff rewards the better teams. I think that's important, and for that, I think that it really would be worthwhile to evaluate alternative ranking systems or rating systems, or the way that you simulate the results. So you're using Opta. You could use transfer market ratings, which we've seen recently. They actually tend to do, in my experience, they tend to do almost as well, or maybe even sometimes even better than the results only based ratings. I think there is a club ELO that also, not just restricted to Europe, but there is some club ELO ratings that includes South American clubs. So you could use that as well. And then the parameters that you use to predict outcomes, those are also important, right? And I think you were using a multinomial logit in the first stage, and then it wasn't very clear how you sort of, or maybe I missed it, how you, include goal difference, because, winning a match 1-0 is different than winning a match 4-0 for the purposes of the outcome of the result. And then, the second point is, like, you emphasize this, disincentive to invest in sort of, top talent. And I know that there is a debate about it, but you also don't want to have, or maybe some people prefer not to have, tournaments where there is one team that dominates, and the fact that perhaps by participating every year in the Copa Libertadores, they also get sort of more prize money and more TV money, and that just creates a monopoly in the long run. And there are a number of leagues across Europe where you have these teams that are on 15-year winning streaks, and it not everybody likes that. I know that there's disagreement, but yeah.
No, thank you, Daniel. No, actually, I think that point is actually very interesting, because that's sort of one of our motivation, our motivating conversations that we had with Daniel before in this project, because yeah, we realized that like having a French league might not seem very exciting, and I think that the Colombian tournament actually tries to, in order to avoid that, goes to the other extreme. We have an extremely exciting tournament, in the sense that, like, you cannot predict which team is going to win the next tournament. Like Nacional, it won like a year and a half ago, but like, it can be anyone, any team. And I do think that there's this trade-off, which actually goes back to your first comment, that quantitatively, which maybe we should push it more, like in what's like the optimal thing between excitement, but actually of making sure that the best team actually wants to win. Because actually, I think we went a little bit too far in Colombia, and that's highlighted by the fact, not that the tournament is exciting per se, but the fact that Colombian teams in Libertadores do very poorly. So in some sense, if you ask me, I would rather have PSG competing to win the Champions League, even though I know the National League would not be very important, rather than our current format, where Nacional didn't even make it to Libertadores this year.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Nacional didn't make it to Sudamericana because we beat them yesterday.
Exactly. I wanted to mention that.
But my question is, because your motivation is a lot on Libertadores, on how we perform in the Copa Libertadores. Maybe you're missing a point, which is outside of your paper overall, because not only the champion goes to the Copa Libertadores. It's you did mention it, but maybe people didn't get it here. Two teams go to. There are two champions in Colombia, so both champions go directly to the phase group of the Copa Libertadores, and then we have, correct me, two more, I think, or three more that play the qualifiers for the Copa Libertadores. So you're kind of pushing it, I think, a bit too hard in terms of it's the tournament that determines how we perform in Libertadores, and your last bullet in the conclusion is really interesting if you would pursue the dynamics and stuff in terms of how we invest. But if you were to ask the football people, the club owners, and they are actually working on that, the big teams, has to do with TV contracts, because there is too much democracy here, so all the teams eventually receive the same amount of money. There is no segmentation, and I don't know, maybe you're pushing it a bit too hard on just the tournament. That's kind of a small comment.
Yeah, so I mean, I think my right to that comment would be outside of this paper, yet at least, but I would claim that if the quality of the teams improves, then it is more likely that TV rights are going to be higher. But of course, I mean, I cannot prove it yet. But so I think, of course, at the end of the day, it's endogenous, right? You need a lot of money to have a good team, and if you have a good team, then you highly likely to win more money. We want to push it from that by taking a stance on the fact that there's this exogenous, at least within the tournament, exogenous quality of the team to see how far we get. We're finding this is incentive. Then if you endogenize that quality, you might get that if you have a poor tournament design, you're gonna get in equilibrium worse quality, right? And then that might bring less money. Of course, we could also think the other way around, right? Let's put a lot of money, and then team quality is going to improve, and then maybe our Santa Fe is gonna win Libertadores this year, which actually Santa Fe did make it to Libertadores to the group stage, because Santa Fe won the tournament last year. But I do think, like personally, I do think that it is like, I don't know. Let me jump to another economic question, which is like, at the end of the day, I see this tournament design problem as a misallocation problem. We have this quality, and there's misallocation due to the rules. So in that sense, like you have the same firm quality in an economy. If you take out the thing that draws the cost of misallocation, you're gonna get a greater GDP. That's kind of a similar stance that we're getting here. But it is true that at the end of the day, everything is endogenous. We could take another stance.
Thanks, Jorge. Alex is next.
So I'll come back to this tournament structure and tournament design. So I take a look at the 2025 thing, the championship, Apertura, Torneo Apertura. Okay. So your measure of ability is some kind of opta measure that is being updated like ELO, right? More or less.
Yes.
Great. Now, going back to the tournament design and tournament incentives, I see that the teams in 2025 that finished first in this in the semifinal round robin are Independiente and Santa Fe, correct?
Yes.
Now, Independiente finished 8th in the regular season, and Santa Fe 6th, which means that they adjusted their efforts in probably somehow in the first stage of the tournament, which probably influenced their opta score, right? And therefore the entire exercise is based on what I'm trying to say is when you disregard the tournament incentives, you might, with high probability, you might miss something very important. So those opta scores are probably biased because they disregard the tournament incentives where people save effort because they don't care about the result, because starting from the second stage, they actually don't take all the points from the first stage. So basically the last matches of the first stage are irrelevant for many teams.
Actually, I think I see your point. I think, interestingly, the last matches of the first stage are the most important because the team quality is so close that in the last stage is very exciting. The last game of the first stage is usually very exciting because you have 5 teams competing for 2 spots to the last 2 spots. I see your point, but I think Santa Fe was the champion, and was the champion. I think it was more of a random of luck. It did well in the games that it needed to do well. Defeated the United twice. Once. But even being the champion, look that the opta score didn't change much. I mean, the fact that in the following tournament, Santa Fe is also the 6th best team. So I think actually that might be actually in favor of a result, in the sense that teams saving themselves for the last part is detrimental to the best teams, because you need to be the best team. You only need to play fairly well the last couple of games. I don't know, Daniel, if you want to.
Yes.
So this actually means that schedule matters and the allocation of efforts matters, and all of those you disregard in your analysis.
I'm not sure scale. I mean, for sure, scale might matter, but more than that, I think it's precisely these incentives of how far you get, like how likely how likely are you as a team to do well in the tournament? And what teams are might finding out is that you need to be that good of a team to have a good chance of being a champion. And I think that that's consistent with the result.
Okay.
I would like to mention something there that I consider important. So the first part is that, of course, what you're saying about the Opta ranking may be true. Definitely, that's some concern that we had. But this like in spite of this idea, we have seen that the Opta ranking correlation, like this is not something we have in the paper, but it's an exercise we did before, like empirically. So we compared different leagues from South America and from Europe, and we were seeing the format. That was one of the first motivations, and we were seeing the format as leagues or different formats that they were using. And what we saw is the Opta ranking is very correlated to the final positions in the league when the format is a league, but it stops, like the correlation decreases a lot when the format is like something like this one. So what we are seeing is that, for example, best teams are the ones that are more consistent. Of course, the incentives may be important, but also it has a lot of games from the past, a lot of games from the like international tournaments, and this is an NL ranking not only for like local relevance, but it includes all the teams in the world. So that's something that this correlation may say that this bias may, like I find that this bias may not be that big here, because when we change the format, the correlation is really high for those countries and those tournaments with their ranking, and this ranking is actually more correlated with transfer market values, with other rankings, with odds probabilities, as you were mentioning before, than with the actual champion or the positions in the table at the end of the tournament. So of course, these incentives may create a problem for the Opta ranking as it is for the Colombian teams. That's something that may be true, but I wanted to mention that. And two quick points. The first one is that what you're mentioning about Santa Fe being 8 and that may be affecting and being the champions, that's something that could be true, that maybe they were saving their performance until the final round or something like that, but they almost didn't qualify. That's something to mention. So they like they were struggling to qualify to those 8 teams. That's something. And what you're saying is like a realization, like just one thing that happened, and that may be like saying that the probability that we are predicting weren't that accurate. That could be, but if we remove the names of the teams and we just say like team A, B, C, D until H, up to H, and we have the scores regardless the name of the teams and the quality, what we are having is like a value of the quality of a team. And what we are saying is that depending on the format of the tournament that you have, the teams that have more quality are decreasing their probabilities. So of course, your comment is very valuable to consider in the exact example of the Colombian League, in the name of the teams that are there and the actual level of the teams that are there for the predictions of a specific group of teams. But maybe if we take those names of the teams out and we only have like a list of scores or a level for each of the teams, we may see that the result that we are saying is that the format is important for rewarding the best teams and maybe giving more chance to worse teams in being champion. That's what I want to say.
Sorry that I jump in before Daniele. I just took a look at Independiente Medellin in the last season. So in the last 5 matches, I guess they already ensured their qualification. They lost 2, they drew twice, and they won only once, which seems like a good idea to save efforts for the playoffs. And this could have affected the Opta score.
Yes, I mean, we definitely need to take a look at that. Yeah, my conjecture is like, yeah, that would be kind of a second order thing. But yeah, for sure, we need to check. I'm seeing who raised their hand first. Danielle, I think it was you.
Yeah, no, just sort of commenting again on sort of this notion about sensitivity to different rankings, and Danielle was talking a little about it, and the correlation is very high, but you have to be a little bit careful, because especially if you're looking at the extreme outcome, like probability of winning the tournament, 2 rankings are they're probably going to have like a similar correlation with the actual result, but it could very well be that the team at the top is a significant outlier. The R square of the regression is still very high. So just to give you a sense of this, I play with these things, and I have some predictions for the the Champions League, this year's Champions League. These were made before the knockout round, and so using Club ELO ratings, I was getting Arsenal having a 33% chance of winning the Champions League. Using transfer market rating, Arsenal, still the favorite, had a 14% chance. So there's like a huge variability. The betting odds, depending on how you clean the bookmaker's margin, is about 25%. So somewhere in between. So these things can be quite sensitive to how you model things. And the Club ELO, what's going on is that the English league has been very dominant in Europe relative to other teams, and Arsenal has been very dominant within the English league. Not everybody will be happy about that, but that's what the results are saying. And so you get that they are sort of massive favorites, probably more than what the betting odds thinks. So just a thing to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Just 2 things. One, kind of to help, or I don't know, add to your response to Alex. Alex, it is very difficult to just stop, caring about the games, even if you qualified in the top 8, because there are 2 additional standings in Colombia. The one you're playing, the one for promotion, which counts for 3 years, and then an annual one, a yearly one, which determines if you are not champion, but you are 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, I think 7th in the yearly standing, you go to compete to either Copa Libertadores or the equivalent of the Europa League, which is the other league, which is Copa Sudamericana. So it is very difficult for a team to stop playing seriously for more than 1 game, because they normally will, okay, we may not win the tournament, but we want to qualify for an international tournament, and that's done via the annual standings. But maybe David, I think Danielle's point earlier that your paper is a lot, at least empirically, is a lot about not qualifying but quantifying. There are a lot of specificities every year. I can, because I know the league, I can mention you a lot. But you shouldn't do that. So I think it would be really important to do this systematically for the past 10 years. I don't know. and kind of then, all these specificities like the one Alex was mentioning, if it were true and stuff, would go away, and we would focus on, whether up to score is the best or whatever. But I think just doing 1 year is probably missing the point about if we believe that if we agree with Daniel, which I agree that it's a lot about quantifying this effect.
Yes, that's actually a very fair comment. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Jorge. I have a question actually, which is kind of broader than I think the other questions, which is why does Colombia organize its league system in this way in the first place? It's obviously been doing it for many, many years. Why does it split into these two halves and then have the additional tournament at the end?
Yeah, I think Jorge actually knows a little bit more of the story, but yeah, Colombia used to have a league, like a league as in the European style league into like the 70s, I think. And at some point, Millonarios was too dominant, and I don't like saying that. So they tried to make it a little bit more exciting. And and then and that was like, it was still like a year-long tournament. And then at some point, Argentina was doing 2 annual tournaments, and why have 1 cup when you can have 2? And at this point, I think we got too far in towards the exciting part.
I will add something there, and is Colombia, like Colombians like football, but Colombians don't go too much to the stadium or are not too into football sometimes. And for television, for the stadiums, the people who goes to the stadium, these final rounds are more exciting than the league. So sometimes in the first stage, you can see places where there are 5,000 people, 10,000 people in clubs that are considered big clubs. And then in the final rounds is the one in which actually everybody is watching their TVs, are going to the stadiums. So that is something that I also consider important, and in the sense of giving more awards each year, and also having more excitement to bring more people to watch important games. So this sense of having playoffs or quadrangulars or final games and a lot of finals is very appealing for the fans. And here they kind of like having a final game and a trophy for that final game instead of just being the best one through the year. So that's something I consider that may have been an incentive for having this format.
But what I want to see is if that claim also holds in general equilibrium, because I think that's like a partial equilibrium claim, right? Because in general equilibrium, using worse teams, there's less likelihood that you want to watch that game. So,
Great, thanks for that. I mean, I'm interested in the claim there. I mean, obviously, I guess you observe it on the television that the crowds are higher. Have people looked at the extent to which the crowds are drawn by these games and television audiences and things like that?
it is true that the attendance is not very high. It goes very high in the final rounds. The final is always the stadium is always full. Or it is also, but then my counterclaim is that in the English league all the stadiums are full, in the Spanish league all the stadiums are full, and most teams in the Spanish league don't compete to win the league, right? So that's why I want to claim that it's like a general equilibrium thing that we're not seeing, but I mean we need a better model for that.
And I think that before in the 80s and the 90s, the stands were full. It's just that like from when you changed the format, the first stage started to be less crowded and the final one started to be more crowded. So maybe the change of format also made that happen. But Jorge knows a lot about the football history than I do, definitely, like in Colombia.
I don't know if Daniele's question is related, or Jorge, you wanted to make a comment on that before?
No, it is related. So, yes. Sorry. I think this also goes back to the second point I made before, which is, you could think of sort of writing down the sort of an objective function of the Colombian League, where it cares, both about, attendance and TV rights and how much it can sell these sort of important final knockout games and stuff like that, but also selecting the best teams that can sort of qualify for the Libertadores. And so that would, again, with a nicely quantified model, you can say, okay, now let's strike the right balance of how much randomness do we want to include in the structure of the league to sort of maximize this objective function. And of course, you can debate about how much weight you should give to one factor versus the other.
That would be very cool. Yeah, we're definitely gonna aim for that because honestly, personally, I would love to have such a model.
Yeah, just to add to David's answer, yeah, it's the reason is that in the past, as in Europe, only the champion went to the main tournament, which was Copa Libertadores. But unlike Europe, we didn't have a Recopa, cup winners, nor a UEFA Cup. So there was only a prize for the champion. And so it kind of made sense. Yeah, it's true that it's something about Millonarios winning too much and stuff, but it was the fact that there was a prize only for the first place. But then, and actually that also happened in Europe. I don't know, Stefan probably remembers about, some Spanish, I don't see any Spanish people here. In 1986 or 7 in Spain, they invented something called a playoff, which they divided the league in three, if I remember well, and it didn't go out very well. Because it was also true that essentially, the champion would go to the Champions League at the time, the European Cup, and that was the only big prize. And trying to make some excitement now, but my claim is that today it's different. Essentially, the first 7 teams, and moreover, at the time there was no relegation in Colombia, so it was just the first prize and nothing else. So it makes sense today to actually think about what David is thinking. If it's better to change the format because the first 7 will play for something, and the bottom teams are playing to remain in the first division. So yeah, that's the point, I think.
Just to add to that, we have seen some transitions from local leagues, like South American leagues, towards this format. Before, I think Ecuador had a similar format to Colombian format, Peru as well, and they have transitioned to league formats or similar to league formats. Some of them still have a final game, like in Uruguay. Some of them have 2 tournaments each year and things like that. That it's a hybrid format to a completely double round robin like in Europe. But we have some tournaments transitioning to the league format. Also, we have the Belgium, for example, the Belgium format. That is, you have all the teams playing a first round robin round, and then you, as Jorge was saying, you divide or split the teams into 3 groups, in which the first one is playing for the championship, the second one is playing for a qualification to international tournament, and the third one is playing for relegation and things like that. So there are formats that may be, as Daniel was saying, may keep the interest in the crowd while transitioning to a more, let's say, a fair format that rewards the best teams or the best quality teams. So that's something that motivated us at the beginning, and is showing how the format is important to define the championship and to define if the best teams are being rewarded. And with that, being able to kind of have like a proposal in a different format that combines, as Daniel was saying, the interest of the teams in the crowds and the television rights with the interest of having the best teams being champions more constantly than they are being right now.
Stefan.
Yeah, you probably sense that I have a disagreement with something fundamental about this approach about claiming that you can know the best, and because you keep talking about the best team as if that was a knowable thing. But just to sort of think about it another way, I wonder if you've considered the role that transfers play in this. So, okay, presumably if you have a best team, then that depends on the players in that team. And I'm guessing that in Colombia, a lot of the players move quite regularly to other leagues. And so that a team, once it loses its best player to Spain or Italy or wherever they go, then now it's no longer probably the best team in some sense. So I don't know, did you take that into account? It seems like something that could be quite interesting to think about, how for a league like Colombia, which is very sensitive to losing talent to foreign countries, that might be an interesting approach to thinking about which teams really progress in tournaments.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Although, and this is more my perception because I haven't looked at like the strong data, but my perception is that for some teams, yeah, losing like a key player, yeah, it changes everything. But like for the best teams, once you lose a key player, that the team goes to find the best player for the other team. So like consistently, you're seeing like good teams, and also like the best teams also have like these junior leagues where they keep moving the players up. I think on net the quality is going down, added to what we claim in the paper due to transfers. But then we also see like a new phenomenon where all players are coming back, and this is kind of newish. So and so in that sense, it can be kind of compensating. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, of course, I want. I have all the incentives to push our paper more, but that kind of gives me reason like to defend our position that it might be something like that quality that we claim is quality might not be so sensitive to just key players leaving.
Yeah, I mean, but surely, I mean, it's pretty common for teams to lose a great player. They replace them with somebody that costs them a lot of money, but they're not as good, right? It's just. I mean, that's an absolutely standard thing that happens in football. I can't believe that doesn't happen in Colombia.
Yeah, yes. I mean, yeah, but yeah. I mean, I think like my economist answer would be yes. Maybe we should. Yeah, that might be worthwhile checking our data, like to save. You can see something there.
Yeah, I want to mention two things there. We also have a model for individual players ratings. We're not using it in here, but the ratings of the players from the different teams may like they are very similar to these ratings we are talking about. Of course, they may be different. I don't want to talk about correlations as you were suggesting before, but I mean what we see is a very similar behavior between the individual scores of the players in a team and the scores we are seeing here. What David is saying is true. It may happen that a team loses a very good player, but that is not that often in Colombia. Like you have really good players that are really different. Like maybe once every 2 years, and that another team pays a lot of money. Like they go to Argentina, they go to Brazil. That's true, but for example, I don't know. I will give two examples. Junior this year lost Jose Enamorado. That he was really good for Junior, and it was amazing, and they're missing him. But they brought Luis Muriel, that was in Atalanta some years ago, and it was really good. So that's something that compensates. And also, for example, Nacional sold Marino Inestrosa, that was a good player that almost got to Boca Juniors and went to Brazilian League, but they brought Nicola Rodriguez, that is a very good player, very young, 21 years old, and they have Juan Manuel Rengifo emerging from the lower divisions, that is 20 years old. So they are all the time generating new players that are in a very similar level. Like having someone like Luis Diaz or Falcao or in a team, that's something that happens once in a blue moon. So that's not very common to lose level for a transfer like very often.
I mean, that just, I'm sure that sounds a bit weird, Daniel. I mean, it's sort of, you're kind of saying it doesn't matter who's in the team. The team's always good. That's just not,
No.
that's just not
It does.
right.
It does matter a lot. What I'm saying is that we don't have. It does matter a lot. What you're saying is true. What I want to say is that transfers in Colombia, like the average level of the transfer, the teams try to keep a similar level season after season. And what I'm saying is that big players that make the difference in the teams, they appear once in a blue moon. Like that's not something that is very constant. And when a player that is important goes to a different team, they usually like a player like, for example, the example of these Diaz or players like those ones, they leave Colombian League very young. So they were in the team for 1 year or maybe 1 year and a half. So that's the impact they have in their teams is not that huge. Of course it matters. I don't want to say that the level of the players doesn't matter. It does, but the teams try to keep similar level throughout the seasons, and they kind of achieve that. And like seeing players that are really relevant leaving a team is not that, like, you don't see it that often. Or I what I think is that you don't see it that often. Maybe I'm wrong. Please, Jorge or David, do you know more about this local context as well? But I don't see it happening.
I mean, what I'd say is that, I mean, there's a circularity in this, that you have it in your mind that these are the best teams. And now what you're saying is, well, these are the best teams, regardless of transfers. And that's because they balance it out. That's because they are the best teams. I mean, you see what I mean? This is not, it's not, the data is not driving your conclusions here. Your priors are driving your conclusions. And that's where I think, I think you can, there's something interesting here that you can do, but I just think that this way of thinking about it, of having this in your mind, oh, there are the best teams already. This is the thing that's getting you away from the economics and getting you into sort of really just a sort of an assertion of faith about who are the best teams. I mean, why do you even need to know who the best teams are? Why do you even need to? What's the importance of it? I mean, it doesn't matter. The best. Why isn't it? Why can't we just be interested in the teams that win? And then we can talk. I mean, it's for barroom to talk about who's the best, right? I mean, that's let's leave it to people over their beer to think about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah. Maybe this like this ex ante perception that we have that even the good teams might lose. Real Madrid lost this week, right? So like maybe like the like as a primitive to define the quality of a team, just like based on results, might leave out like this randomness that could happen. So. Uh, of course, I think like a good economy should be like agnostic, and of course we need more like to check more things. But in that sense, like I feel like this definition, the best team being like that has the probability of winning, not actually the ones that actually wins, like allows us to have like this to take into account like this randomness.
Like I want to mention something there. I understand what you're saying, and definitely Stefan is very valuable. I don't want to say players don't are not important, and your suggestion is very important for us. But there is a paper by Lasek and Gagolewski from 2018 that I find really interesting, and is that the question they have, they've tried different formats to the formats we are trying, but the question they have is very similar in the sense that they want to test the efficacy of a league, and they define efficacy of a league as the final result being close or consistent with the result of the team level. Let's not call them best or worst, but like of the level. So that's what a sense of fairness that we wanna adjust. So to say, like, if you invest more, you have better players, if you have better level, that's at the end what we have. Of course, there may be different approaches for this, and your suggestions are very important for these approaches. But at the end, what we want to say is the level of the teams we have is close or similar and is reflected in the format we have or not. So that's like kind of a question we want to answer, and if the format is important for the probabilities of having a champion or not according to their level. So I agree that defining the best team may be different may be difficult. There may be different approaches and some things that we are not considering, and you're saying, and it's true. But also the sense of, or the idea of having consistency between the level of the teams and the result that the format gives us is a concern or a motivation that we are having, and that's why we are talking in these terms of best teams or quality teams or things like that.
There is a literature on this that goes back a long way, back to the 60s, and particularly it's an American literature that says that there is somehow some natural ordering of ability, and that the role of a tournament design is to replicate that prior ordering, which is sort of like, I mean, to me, it's a sort of quasi-fascist kind of theory, right? They're saying basically there is a natural order in the world, and the responsibility of those organized competitions is to ensure that that natural ordering is replicated. And I would say we should oppose that. That's not the way we should think about it. We should think about it saying is the ordering is what comes out of competition, and that's what we think is worthwhile. Competition, and then seeing. And if a team that is allegedly the best is defeated by a team that is allegedly not as good, they weren't as good on that day. They're just not as good, and that's too bad.
I understand that may be true, but also what we are seeing is that the format has implications in the results. That's the message we want to deliver. So of course there may be different motivations, and as Daniel was saying before, like we may have an outcome that considers different motivation from the level, from the crowd, from the TVs, and all those stuff are important. And what you're saying is important too, that may defend one of the tournaments or one of the formats that may be playing. But the message at the end is that the format we use has implications in the results. That's what we want to say.
Oh, that I agree. Okay.
And our claim is not that for instance, Nacional should win, but like in the case like the stance we're taking is like a good tournament should have Nacional having more chances to win it. Not because that's why we allow this randomness, which like personally I think is one of the beauties of sport. Like there's this always randomness.
And trust me, I don't like saying Nacional is the best team. I don't like saying that ever.
We almost out of time. Alex, you had your hand up. Did you want to make one final comment?
Yeah, no. Daniel actually said that this is about efficacy of tournament, something that you never said before, and that's why Stefan said, well, he went to fascism, but okay. In that regard, basically, in fact, in his book, Stefan's saying that we do like to see big teams playing and superstar effect. And if big teams lose, I guess you get a final between Monaco and Porto that not too many people cared about in 2004, but that's a matter of taste, I guess. So this is basically you try to answer the question of efficacy of the tournament. That's it. Kind of, but you already said it, so.
Great. Well, thank you, Alex. Thank you, David. Thank you, Daniel. That was a really interesting presentation. It's timely for us here in England because the playoff tournament in the Championship to gain promotion to the Premier League, they've just yesterday decided they're going to make it into a 6-team tournament or a 4-team tournament. So you could finish 8th place in the Championship and be in the Premier League next season. So all these kinds of questions are always relevant and a really interesting talk, a really interesting approach. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your questions and comments as well. We are back in a week's time. In a week's time, we're going to have Jess Hargreaves from the University of York presenting Cluster AFC, Clustering Career Trajectories of Elite Association Football Players. So, wish you all a fantastic weekend. Thank you again, David. Daniel, wish you all the best with your research as you move forward. And see you all next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks all so much.